Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Over the last 3 weeks, we have gone into 3 aspects of the wounded feminine. The first week we went into sister wound, and then mother wound, and then witch wound. And what we can also look at is the 3 goddesses, or the 3 archetypes of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And how this affects us as women today in our relationship with youth, with getting older, with the roles that we play, with the identities that we take on, and how this is all shaped by patriarchy. So we are on this heroine's journey, and I like to say that the last 3 weeks are looking at the split from the divine feminine, and starting to identify the way in which we disconnected from the divine feminine. And so now that we've gone through these 3 different aspects of the split, we're moving into the second part of our journey, what I call the surrender. And the surrender is about putting down our sword and shield. At Sistership Circle, we have our invocation, and that is the invitation that when women come into circle, they need to put their sword and shield down at the door. They're not coming in to defend themselves, to protect themselves, and neither are they there to pass judgment and to attack one another and be in the drama triangle, essentially, of the victim, martyr, and perpetrator. So in laying down our sword and shields, there's a level of surrender and a letting go. And I believe that this is required for the deepest level of reconnection with the divine feminine, because the feminine is the mystery. It is going into the void, into the fertile soil. And when we fall back into the unknown, we have to surrender. We have to let go. And that requires a level of trust. And sometimes what that comes down to is a trust in the higher power, a trust in the feminine, in the great mother. And from that place, we can then build the inner trust in ourselves and start to then also trust one another as mirrors of ourselves. We trust our sisters as a reflection of the divine feminine within ourselves. So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about the surrender. And this week is about passing the gates of judgment into the abyss. Sounds a little scary. What does that mean? It means that in our culture that is so focused on the Son of God in our religion, and the bright side, the being happy, the light, that there's a lot of bypassing of the dark. And there's a great fear of the abyss. And in our culture, we fear death as the ultimate abyss. It's the void. We don't have death rituals in the way that some other cultures do. There's not a lot of preparation of passing over to the other side. There's so much fear, and we're grasping onto life. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to face our mortality, right? We want to be immortal, young beings forever. And we're looking for what is that fountain, that elixir that will allow us to live forever. That's not really the life cycle. There's birth, there's life, there's death, there's rebirth. And in fact, the feminine is here to teach us that as women in our monthly cycles. Every single month, we peek into the full glory of our vibrancy, of our Shakti at ovulation. And then we slide down the hill and we die and we shed and we release. And we go into the dark moon with the shedding of our blood, our period. And then we rise up again in a rebirth. And the same thing happens with the seasons, where we are teeming with life. In the spring, there's birth. And then in summer, again, we're in that full unbridled self-expression of the lights. And then there's the harvesting of the fall, and then the death of winter. This truly is something that is so important for us to embrace. And so for us to get to the abyss, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. We first need to pass through the gates of judgment. And so what does that mean? What are these gates? And what is this judgment? So really, this is our rebirth as women into brave leaders, into our connection with the divine feminine. It's the rebirth into spiritual adult, I like to call her, where we are maturing and we are embodied in our spirituality. We're not bypassing. And there's a real depth of quality to our spirituality, and it's very much in the body. And so this is a new way of being. And it's kind of like with motherhood, I remember feeling like I passed through into this other realm. I literally was like, the veil was lifted, and here I am in this new realm called motherhood. And I looked back at the way in which I would treat other mothers, the way in which I would act with my friends who were just becoming mothers, and just no awareness of what this was like. And there's a whole new way of being in that other realm. And this goes really for any initiation. It's the initiation when we have our first blood, our first menses, when we're passing from girl to now usually teenager or young adult. It's really passing into from child to woman. There's the passage from maiden to mother. There's the passage from single to married to wife. There's the passage from mother to enchantress. And there's also that passage into crone. And these are, I would say, the main initiations, these portals that we walk through as women, these different stages of life where we're literally passing into a new realm. And there's a new way of being that we're stepping into. And so when we're passing through the gates of judgment into spiritual adult, this is on our heroine's journey of stepping into being the brave woman, the spiritual adult, the feminine leader, the woman who is fully embodied in her power. She has to give up the old way of being. She has to unravel the conditioning from patriarchy. And this is why we looked at the split. And we get to see how this conditioning around sister, mother, witch, how that has shaped us and created an identity and created a role in which we play. And so there's a way in which we now need to release these old ways of being and also look at the strategies that we have developed to keep ourselves safe in the patriarchal world from that old way of being. And so the gate of judgment is looking at what fear, abandonment, guilt, or shame comes up and is associated with giving up the old way of being. What fear or shame do you have around your new identity? So the first thing that may come to mind is coming out of the closet as a witch. And whatever word you use to describe that spiritual woman who's connected with the earth, who is connected with nature and the cycles of life and the cycles of the moon, there are some really deep fears around coming out of the spiritual closet, feeling like you are a wizard in the Muggle world. There might be some shame that also comes up. There's the Scarlet Letter that was part of the witch burning and that whole world of women who were embodied in their power. And usually when we're stepping into this feminine leader, this spiritual adult, you are stepping into your full self-expression and also your sexual power as you're reclaiming your Shakti life force, your sexual creative force, your womb space. This is a lot of what we talked about with mother. It's also with witch. And so as you step into the embodiment of your full sexual power, and not in a leaky way, but in the way of the enchantress who channels and uses that sexual energy as magic, there's some guilt that comes up around that. Because the old conditioning is to be ashamed of your body, to feel guilty around your desires, especially your sexual desires. And our culture has really demonized Eve in eating the forbidden fruit. and have essentially taken away her sexual power, Mary Magdalene's sexual power, even Mother Mary's sexual power. So it can be really easy to go into guilt as we are finding this new expression and this new way of being. There's fear around truly expressing your truth. What are people going to think? What are they going to say? There is fear around honoring your intuition. That, can you really trust it? Is it really, is this my intuition? There's a questioning of that. And then there's a fear of, as I'm stepping into my spiritual gifts, as I'm stepping into my sexual power, some of these old relationships aren't working for me anymore. And I might have to let go. And what does that really mean? And I've actually been coaching a lot of women over the years who that is exactly what happens when they are on the heroine's journey, is they go through a breakup, a divorce, or even a letting go of an old job. Because sometimes the job is just, you just can't tolerate it anymore. And in fact, you've been tolerating a lot of things. And so that passing through the gate of judgment is really starting to look at these things that no longer serve you and the way in which you justify or defend the old way of being, because there is some level of judgment there. And so the invitation here is to have little strips of paper. And whether that's Post-it notes, or you get a piece of paper and you just cut strips, but you write down all of the fears, shame, guilt, abandonment, all of it. You write down all of these things that are they're there, and perhaps you don't really want to face it. You don't really want to identify it. But in writing it down, you can then start to release these fears, this guilt, this shame. And so you can write each one on a piece of paper and do fire ceremony, whether this is by yourself or with a circle of sisters. And you say, I release my guilt around my sexual expression, and you throw it into the fire. And each one, you read it out loud. I release my fear. I release my shame. And you keep going until there's no more strips left. There's something so powerful about identifying and then speaking these things out loud. Brene Brown says that shame cannot live in the light. It's only when it's buried deep within us and we are avoiding it, we are ignoring it, that it breathes in and of itself. This is why Circle is so powerful and so important, is when we start sharing in Circle and we're witnessing other women share and we're being witnessed, and we say some things that we perhaps have never told a soul, it no longer has a grip. And we start to see that we're not alone in this guilt, fear, shame, discomfort, abandonment, whatever it is. We start to see that it's normal. And when we put it out there, it no longer has the stranglehold, the grip on us. We no longer feel like we're being choked or held back anymore. It's no longer holding us hostage. There is such power in speaking the fears aloud. And what I notice sometimes is that when we invite women to share their fears, at first, you don't want to talk about it. But once one comes out, they all come rushing out. That is what it means to pass through the gates of judgment, is to acknowledge the judgments. And so we want to continue to go deeper with this and look at what are all the roles that I am unconsciously playing. What are the relationships, jobs, or situations that I'm tolerating or feel stuck in? What do others expect of me? So once we can start to see the identity that we've been caught in, and we can see how there's a facade and it's actually been holding us back from our truth, then we can look at what has the impact been on my fulfillment, on my joy, on my expression. I can start to see that I've been living in a spiritually parched desert. These roles, these identities, these relationships, these jobs have kept me in the matrix. So, can I allow myself to fully surrender to the arid, parched desert where I have been disconnected spiritually from the Great Mother, from the Divine Feminine, from my soul? So by first passing through these gates and identifying all my fears and identifying the roles and all of these things, I can then put my toe in the desert, and then my foot, and then my leg, and then fully step in and feel. That's the abyss. It's the emptiness. If I let go of all of my roles, of all of these relationships that don't serve me, of this job that I've been tolerating, of these situations that I've been tolerating, if I let this all go and I get to the nothingness, who am I? Do I matter? And do I exist? I remember in 2013 when I asked myself this question, and I passed through the gates of judgment into the abyss. And I realized how much of myself I had actually attached to the role of CEO, leader of my company, how much I attached my sense of self-worth to being an entrepreneur, to my company, and the ways in which I kept choosing relationships that didn't fully serve me. And if I let go of my business, if I did nothing because I was going, doing, and totally attached, who am I? If I'm not a leader, who am I? If I'm not a daughter, who am I? If I'm not a girlfriend, who am I? If I let go of this business completely, what am I going to do with myself? If I don't work at all, do I matter? If I just meditate all day and all night and just eat and breathe and meditate and do absolutely nothing, what's going to happen to me? Will my needs be met? How will I survive? If I did nothing and I fully surrendered into the void, into the abyss, do I exist? And I imagined stepping into a black hole of nothing and what would happen to me. And I was terrified. I felt lost. I felt confused. And I really looked at how I had been chasing these dreams and so caught up in an identity of success my whole life. And so in being in the nothing, in the abyss, in the void, in the darkness, I felt the emptiness of losing it all. No friends, no lover, no job, no nothing. And I allowed it to swallow me whole. And then I went on an ayahuasca journey. And there I was laying on the mat, starting to go into the medicine. This was in Peru. And the Javier is his name. We could call him the shaman, whatever you want to call him. He would say, I'm not a shaman. But he comes over and he starts using his broom and he starts patting my womb. And then he starts singing. I think he said he sang a rose song. And I just felt it pulling me in, pulling me in, pulling me in. And then I shot up into the cosmic womb. And I felt like I died. And there, this golden figure, this golden priestess came to me. And I connected with her black face, but just this kind of shimmery gold outline. And then I cut the cords with my lineage, seeing my grandmother's little girl, my mom's little girl, and cutting the cord of this, whatever, the conditioning that I had learned, right? This sister mother crone, or the maiden mother crone. And then I healed that. And then I just allowed myself to die, to be in this full abyss. So what was so powerful about this was going through this on one dimension, in this 3D dimension, and then going into a medicine journey and allowing the medicine to have this go on an even deeper subconscious level. And so when I came out of that, I then somehow crawled my way out of the hut that we were in, and I had my hands and feet and my knees in the grass, and just feeling the mother, feeling the earth, and just feeling like I was about to give birth to myself. And I felt so connected to the mother within myself, the great mother. And then it just came up and out. And I just released and released and released. And it didn't even feel like, I don't even know if I was actually vomiting anything. It was this energetic purging and releasing all of this, all of the judgment, all of the guilt, the shame, the fear, all of it. And when I came back from that beautiful journey to Peru, it was a few weeks later that I met Brent. And then 3 months later that I became pregnant. So it really truly was the rebirthing of myself into the spiritual adult. Doesn't mean I was anywhere near perfect, but that's the thing about the feminine. The feminine is mysterious. She's messy. She's definitely not perfect. And that really was the learning there, is that stepping into spiritual adult does not mean you have your shit together. It just means embracing all parts of you. It means embracing the darkness, embracing the messy bits, and stepping into who you truly are and the soul essence. And so even though I had released tribal truth, that's what it was called, and released everything that I was doing, it was almost like I was then able to remember. And there's a beautiful story about Isis going down the river, and she's in the rowboat, and she's picking up the pieces from Osiris, putting them in the boat and remembering him, and coming back into that full union of masculine and feminine actually within herself. That's what this is. It's the remembering of all parts of you. And so that was also with my business of the vision, the soul essence. And now there's this reconfiguring, this remembering of it in the highest expression, which then became Sistership Circle, which went way further than I could have ever imagined. And also then bringing in my divine partner into this. So there was like the remembering of me, the sacred union within myself, and then the sacred union with my beloved, for us to then come into our sacred expression, our soul expression, in birthing Sistership Circle together into the world. So the questions here in the abyss, in feeling the emptiness, asking these questions of, if I let go of all of this, do I matter? Do I exist? Can I survive? Am I safe? And going all the way into that, imagining being in the abyss of nothing, letting go of all the shoulds, the obligations, the expectations, the roles, the identities, the strategies, all of it, releasing all of it, leaving it there into the abyss to be swallowed, and then rebirthing, rising like a phoenix out of the ashes, coming out of the fertile void as this new beautiful seed, the soul seed essence of you. Now, who are you and what are you stepping into? That requires full surrender. We have to be willing to risk it all. And every time I have led a woman to that point, and I have stood on the edge of the abyss with her and had her question that thing that wasn't in alignment, whether it was a job, a relationship, an identity, whatever it was, I felt her terror. I felt her clinging. There was no freaking way she was going to let go of this thing. And so it's not it's going to happen right away. You actually got to sit in it for a little bit and ask yourself, who am I if I let go of that role, that identity, those accomplishments, that strategy, that relationship, all of it? Because the thing is your strategy, your coping mechanisms, they're your safety net. There's a benefit of staying the way you are. There's a benefit of staying safe, of not releasing these things, the comfort zone that you've been living in. There's a reason. It's a strategy because it has worked in the old realm, in the patriarchal matrix. It has been serving you. If you are stepping into the new earth, you're stepping out of the patriarchal matrix into the infinite world of possibilities as the enchantress, as the spiritual adult who manifests a whole new way of being and a whole new reality that is completely foreign at this point. Because again, you're at the threshold, you can't see through. This is an initiation. You can't actually see until you go through this part. You can't see what's on the other side. You have no idea. You have to fully surrender here at this moment. And it's terrifying. And it feels like death, because it is. It is the death of your old reality, your old way of being, the false facade that you have been hiding behind for a very, very long time. So if you release the go, 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 the doing, 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 the playing this role in this matrix and not unplugging yourself like Neo did in the movie, it's like, oh shit, ooh, it's ugly, right? It was so much better, so much more fun in the matrix. And then we just get pulled, right? Like the one guy, he was just like, oh, I'd much rather be in this simulation of eating this beautiful, delicious steak, right? Than be in the world that is so dark and miserable underground, like just the whole world in that movie. I'd much rather be in this simulation, much rather be in the matrix. So much more comfortable, so much more pleasant, so much easier, right? This has been also an experience that I've had in moving down to Costa Rica and pursuing a very, very big vision. But I come back to San Diego, to the creature comforts of first world America. And it's like, oh, it's so comfortable here. Let's just give up the dream. Let's let go of the vision, sell the property. Let's just go back here and live the comfortable life. We could do that. Like, it's always a choice, right? But I have a vision. We were given a vision. And it's a soul calling. And it's requiring me over and over to surrender and trust, surrender and trust. And I don't know what's on the other side. I don't. It is faith. This is a faith process. So part of this, of being able to fully surrender into the dark, into the abyss, is the regulation, the self-regulation of your nervous system. Keep coming back to this over and over again. It's through the breath. You are alive. It may feel like you're dying, but you are alive. When you keep breathing, when you're connected with the breath, and when you start to learn and use these various tools to self-regulate, because that's what's happening, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm about to die. I'm going into a trauma response of either fight, flight, or freeze. My body's having this reaction. Oh, how do I come back into the body versus trying to get out, trying to disassociating? Oh, how do I come back into this body, back into the breath, feeling the spine, feeling the vagus nerve, doing breath work, resourcing myself, feeling my feet in the ground, coming back, coming back. breathing through it as you literally feel like you are in a trust fall. That is the surrender. So can we use the tools to do this work of coming into our soul essence, into spiritual adult? It goes hand in hand, because spiritual adult, being your full self-expression as your soul essence, is in this body. We have to work with this body embodiment. You were given this sacred temple to do your life work. Your soul inhabited this body as its vehicle to do your sacred work on this planet, on this earth plane. Can you feel that? You matter. You matter. This is matter. I said this in one of the previous weeks. You matter. This body matters. We must come back into it. This is our access. The womb is in the body. This womb is connected with cosmic womb, but it doesn't mean you need to leave in this body, surrendering into this body. And yes, it feels like it might be shattering. It feels like you might lose yourself. It feels like the system might be blowing out. We have highly sensitive bodies as light workers. I know I do. And it could be terrifying to use medicine like ayahuasca, because it's like, oh, I'm gone, right? And it is all about this body. So, taking a breath, asking these deep questions, getting curious about the unknown, about the abyss, really looking at, what do I need to let go of to step into feminine leadership, the embodiment of it, the spiritual adult. This is what it means to be brave. And we will continue on the journey with some brilliant tools coming up next.
You just listened to this show. I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow, making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
Up next, as you are descending into the abyss, it's in the mystery where you meet the goddess. Are you ready to receive her support? What does that look like? Find out in the next episode.